Hey guys, it's Asian again, and I want to continue the Returning to Summoner's War video series with a video about closing the gap and catching up when it comes to RTA and kind of PvP. So the first step of catching up is creating monsters that are going to give you a lot of utility and really just be great counter picks to meta compositions and meta units that you're going to see a lot in RTA. And the first monster that we're going to talk about is the one that's currently selected on my screen. It's going to be the Water Joker Cyan. And Cyan is a AoE bomber that has the ability to resurrect himself if he was to die. And when he does resurrect himself, he has invincibility and immunity for one turn. So the premises of this is if the team that you're fighting has one immunity or no immunity at all, you can last pick him or second to last pick Cyan into that team. And if they were to be faster than you, he could die and come back to life and bomb them. Or if they're slower than you can just still bomb them. Essentially, it forces them to either ban Cyan or take a bunch of bombs. And it's really great when you see a lot of teams that are maybe like first team, like cleaving teams that have like a Lucian or a Kaki, something that will give you the chance to respond by doing damage even after you die for the first time. And the reason we were talking about cleavers is when you're in the lower ranks, when you first start RTA after being gone for like years like I did, you'll probably end up in like fighter or challenger leagues, which is the two bottom leagues of the RTA ranking system. So you're going to go against a lot of cleaving teams that are just one turn, one shot kill your whole team so they can get on to the next match and climb out of fighter. Because most likely these players, they are maybe just doing their placement matches or their plays low and they're climbing out and they don't really belong in fighter. So you might be fighting a lot of people like who don't belong in your current rank until they get out of it. So you're going to see a lot of the counter picks and utility monsters I talk about in the first part of this video are going to be trying to win out these cleave teams and survive the first couple turns of their monsters. The next one we want to talk about is Chloe. Chloe was recently buffed to have an arena speed lead. So it was defense before, but now you have a 20% speed lead, which gives you an option of having a speed lead in your team if you don't have other speed leads, or having a secondary choice when it comes to speed. Now, what's great about Chloe is, of course, she has the skill that everyone knows. It's the invincibility and immunity on her third skill. And how you use Chloe is, I would just go with full Nemesis. And the point of that being, if you were to be slower than the other team, and let's say they try to Lucian you or Kaki you, or they have an AoE strip that does damage to you, you have the potential of closing the gap, quote unquote, of speed by taking a little bit of damage on Chloe and thusly having the ability to cast your third skill and give your team a chance to survive the first turn of the other opponent. And how do you rune exactly? Like beyond having 3 Nemesis sets? Well, of course, slot 2 would be speed, and slot 4 and slot 6. That's really up to you, but the whole point of Nemesis is to take damage and thusly increase your attack bar by like the percentage of the damage you take. So you need to take a decent amount of damage sometimes to close gaps of a lot of speed. So in my Chloe, I don't actually have like HP percentage stat on 4 and 6. I have resistance on which I can max out when I have more mana stones on slot 6, and I have a flat HP rune for slot 4 only because it has 32 speed, which is my fastest rune out of all my runes. So I wanted to put it to good use. And this is a great way to use flat stat speeds that you have when you're farming. Like when you're farming and you see a slot 4 or a slot 6 that is flat, like if it has speed and it's a hero or a legendary rune, give it a chance to roll all speed rolls. If it doesn't roll all speed rolls, sell it immediately. So if for the first 3 upgrades, if it doesn't go into speed, sell. If it doesn't go into speed in the first 6 levels of upgraded, sell it immediately. You're only looking for flat stats or resistance or accuracy stats on slot 6 that are going to be pure speed rolls or whatever speed fastest runes you have. And this is the fastest slot 6 Nemesis I have, unfortunately. But you kind of don't want to be too fast with slot 6 because if you're too fast with your Chloe, let's say you're like a good player and farm runes for years, this might not be the video for you, but you don't want to make your Chloe necessarily, unless you have a Katarina, you don't want to make your Chloe 200 speed plus 200 speed, because if you buff your team with invincibility and immunity before their entire team goes and they strip you, it's kind of pointless. And if you say, okay, I'm going to save my skill 3 if I'm too fast and just like hopefully cast it on my next turn, well, you might not survive to your next turn. So that's kind of problematic. I found this speed to be very effective against strippers and against people who are AoEing me. And for some reason, it has plus 16,000 hit points on my runes somehow, some way. But you might not need that much hit points, but I found that's pretty good to survive some cleaves sometimes. The next one is a Fran, and I ruined Fran the same way. Similar speed as far as the increase in speed from stats, less hit points, which is kind of problematic at times. So you only want to pick Fran and Chloe into teams that are cleaving you, that you think you can survive the cleave or you can survive the strip. And strippers don't really do that much damage, so that's pretty easy. But like I would pick it into like in Hope against Moors, against Savannah, stuff like that. And so I have this on Nemesis Will, because I don't have any other slot 6 and slot 2 Nemesis runes, I don't believe, that would fit. They're on Chloe. So basically, if you pick, like let's say they're picking Bastet, Lucian, Kaki, stuff like that, you can double pick Chloe and Fran pretty early on in your draft and kind of flush out the rest of your draft with other counter picks for cleaves or things that would win against cleave. But having these 2 units gives you what? 2 speed leads. I know Fran's is only 10%, but having 2 speed leads, you need some type of speed to help close the gap even more, because you don't want to be so far behind that if they boost or if they do a little bit of damage to you, you don't go. Problematic, really problematic. So these are possibly your 2 speed leads if you don't have any other monsters that are speed leads. But other monsters that are speed leads, of course, are the 33% stuff like Pisama and Vanessa. Those are monsters, if you have them, they can help close the gap when it comes to speed. But, you know, not everyone has the Nat 5 stuff, but you likely have some Nat 5s and you want to use them, especially if they're really relevant when it comes to RTA. Next monster we're going to talk about is Verd. I have Verd on Triple Revenge. Verd is another way to counter AoE units, or specifically maybe your art masters like Chung Peng, maybe AoE strippers that do damage. Something that gives yourself a chance to respond. So if they hit your Verd, you have 45% chance, which is your revenge. 3 revenge that's 15 times 3. So you have 45% chance to respond with attack boosting attacks from Verd, which would maybe give your team the ability to cut. And that's cutting in between other of their monsters is really important to really disrupting someone's cleave or first turn stuff, because you can heal up with a support unit, you can buff invincibility with Chloe, you can stun them if you have an AoE stunner, stuff like that, or an attack bar pushback. Anything that can just disrupt their turns gives you all the ability to win out that match. And am I saying that you need to rely on RNG to win sometimes? Yeah, I mean, the randomness of RTA is there even without having these kind of like, how do I say, gimmicky units. It's going to be there all the time. RNG can be from violent runes, from despair sets. There's RNG everywhere. You might as well give yourself a chance to get as high as you can. And why do you want to get high? Because maybe you want to collect a lot of World Arena tokens, or you want to just see how competitive you can be at every moment of the game. There's nothing wrong with that. So Verd is a must, and it's a monster you've already created. Just bring it into your RTA monster box and just skill it up. Rune it up with their best revenge runes. You need, once again, to have 100% crit rate. Now my hit points aren't that great, so I usually use my Verd with like Leo and Ragdoll, but I have those units. But if you don't have those units, maybe you want to make your Verd actually tankier. So maybe speed, crit rate, HP, and just have the ability to take the hits and give yourself a chance to respond with your revenges, or at least survive first turn cleave teams. And let's talk about the next monster, which is, this monster is one of the most important monsters you can create. And it's another way to cut into a team's finely tuned turn order. Antares is has a chance to proc between after any time a monster takes a turn. Like anytime a monster takes a turn. So if you're fighting a Sierra, Antares is great against Sierra, because the more and more monsters take a turn, the more and more chance you have to respond with a proc of your own. So let's look at his passive. He has a 15 chance to take a turn whenever your enemy takes a turn. And so if a monster has a skill that allows them to cast their current on their current turn, like Sierra casts a bomb, and she gets an additional turn automatically. But that first turn counts as the ability for you to proc and you to cut in and maybe either kill Sierra outright or stun them with a Despair set. So I run Despair Will on my Antares, just for the chance to cut in and stun, because he has an AoE on his second skill, Sinkhole. Has an AoE, so you can probably proc a Despair Stun every now and then. So it's like an RNG machine that happens to do a lot of damage. Ideally, my runes, like I said, they're not great, but maybe you want to make yours much tankier than mine. Maybe more resistance, stuff like that, to let it survive against monsters that are most likely going to try to kill it ASAP, right? Because a lot of people don't want to have to play against Antares, so they're either going to ban your Antares out, or they're going to kill it first. Maybe you could trap them with a tankier Antares. What is Antares really good against? Like I mentioned, Ciara, maybe Jean the Paladin, because he has an ability to gain additional turn after casting Invincibility. How about... No, sorry, was it the Provoke? Whatever it is. Diana, like the unicorns, because if they transform, it's a turn, and they get another turn after the transform. So those types of monsters are really great for Antares to go up against. And also, I pick Antares versus Cleave teams. Like if the Cleave isn't too strong, if it's a CC Cleave, for instance, like I'm gonna give myself a chance. Just give yourself a chance. There are times where I would pick Antares, Verd, Chloe, Fran, and like Chung Pong, and that's my team. And it's just, okay, RNG versus RNG. Because the reality is, a lot of the game is RNG, like I mentioned before. Why not play into it even more? And you'll find out that having 4 monsters that are doing really gimmicky things is going to be ridiculous. Ridiculous. Outright ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about the next monster, Riley. The reason I bring up Riley is because everyone can get Riley by fusing it. You can fuse it from the fusion building. And Riley has this great ability to have this Grassland Tribe Totem that is castable after being attacked 3 times. So if you're going up against monsters that are AoEing you, like let's say you're getting Lucian, let's say you're getting Strip, let's say you're getting Pushback, you have the ability to rack up 3 totems after 3 attacks and cast this skill that cannot be reset. Okay, it can't be reset. It can't be silenced. You can cast it whenever your turn comes up. So it's going to give healing, it's going to give attack power, and it's going to give immunity. Perfect, right? I mean, so the ability for this thing to cycle turns is really good to survive against teams that are maybe faster than you, or teams that are really heavily on the AoE. So I highly recommend Mick Riley. It's going to be great to play with attack buff sometimes, because you'll see a lot of teams sometimes just don't have attack buff. And having attack buff sometimes kind of can create the difference between winning and losing, or closing the gap is the term I like to use a lot in these videos. So closing the gap. And if you feel like and are inclined to do so, you can skill up Riley with more fusions. It's maybe not the best use of energy, but man, Riley is great. You can use Riley everywhere. So even Devilmon her if you want. Just, focus on things that you can use everywhere. Things like Verd, things like Riley, things like Lulu. Those monsters that you can use everywhere are perfect. And speaking about Lulu, I actually don't use Lulu right now because I don't try to heal all too much. But if your playstyle is more of like a turn 2 tankier type of playstyle, like you want to absorb a lot of damage and respond, Lulu is great, but I think you need Lulu with monsters I don't have. And the monsters that I think Lulu is really good with are the Water Panda, Molong, because Molong's um, Reckless Assault, it does a lot of damage, but it does a lot of damage to yourself, and thus having Lulu can heal yourself up, or just use Riley to heal yourself up as well. Riley can be a great replacement for Lulu, so you can focus on just a smaller amount of monsters, right? That's the goal. Be efficient with your resources with a smaller amount of monsters. Another great monster to use with Lulu, if I had this monster, I would probably use Lulu more, would be probably the most overpowered monster in the game, Carnal, the Red Slayer. Also, you can, if he was also this like Street Fighter variant M Bison, which I missed, and most likely you missed too. There was a Street Fighter collaboration, and CompTOS came out with summonable versions of them. In this case, the M Bison and the Slayers, they are equivalent to each other in all ways. Just the look is a little different. But if you have a Carnal, if you have a Molong in your box, yeah, Lulu would be great. It's a great way to cleanse, a great way to heal. It can be very annoying, even after the nerf that extended its skill cooldown by 1 turn. It's still really good. So Lulu, free to play. It's a 2-star monster that needs to be secondary awakened to be effective. Next, talk about some damage monsters. And this is not free to play necessarily. You will have to summon it, but you should summon it, and that's going to be Kaki. Kaki is a monster that can be very effective. I don't use it. I don't really use damage monsters. I like weird monsters. But if you have it, it's really effective into creating your own cleaves. Like if you have a Bastet, like Kaki is perfect. But what Kaki is really good for is countering Dragon Knights. I think sometimes don't want to. I have Ragdoll, I have Leo, I have Laika, I have Chow. But the idea of fighting Kakis all day long, you're gonna find Kaki in arena all the time. Kaki messes up Dragon Knights badly. He messes up Ragdoll badly, and he does a great AOE. And Kaki is something you should look out for because it makes your life much easier in Dimensional Predator, and it's decent in almost every aspect of PvP in general. Because just like Cyan, Kaki just needs Fatal Runes. He cannot crit. So think about that. If Kaki can't crit, he's great against Ragdoll just outright. But plus any other damage dealer, he can do a great job versus them. So try to summon a Kaki. Like save all your Onimushas to skill him up. You don't need multiple Kakis, so yeah, just feed them into him. Save one wind, save one water, because all the Kakis are really good. I mean, from light, dark, fire, water, wind, all good. So keep one of each, but then feed the rest in the Kaki, and he's going to serve you really well when you need to take out Dragon Knights and things like that. Let's talk about Ayunu next. So Ayunu, I mentioned him in my previous video as far as being really effective in Solar Raid, and he is. But I was showing you like a 4-star Ayunu for Raid. If you want to use him in PvP, you can. Let's see, where did I put him here? He's here. So Ayunu, like I mentioned in another video, he has the ability to revive and attack the person who killed him. So if you are getting cleaved again, let's say Lucian kills your Ayunu, you can revive yourself and apply Brand of Hell, then go have another turn to outright kill the person who killed you, or kill another person. And you can turn this into a 2-for-1 pretty easily and have a monster living at the end of it. And he also has the ability to Oblivion. So Brand of Hell has an Oblivion. So let's say Pisamath, which is the water fairy king. Let's say he kills you. You can kill him when you revive. And if you Oblivion him on the first hit, then guess what? He's not going to revive and attack you again. Sounds good, right? And just having Oblivion on a team can work wonders, especially having an elemental advantage versus Pisamath, but also having, let's say, an elemental advantage versus, I don't know, like a Nana, like other water monsters can work really effectively. Once again, Ayunu is not free to play, but try to summon him. Try to summon 2 of him, one for PvE, one for PvP. Feed him skill ups, and I have him currently on Vampire. So the reason he's on Vampire is because let's say he dies, he comes back with, what is it, 30% health? So he's 30% HP. If you have him on Vampire, he can heal himself up and even make himself even more effective. He can work on Violent as well if you want, or Rage. You can make a Rage Ayunu if you have excess damage runes, right? And another monster that can be really good in RTA is Escher. Escher, because he has really high base speed. I don't use him again because he's not my style, but if you have him and you have a style of going really fast, you can compensate for having a little crappier set of rune. Let's put your fastest Swift set on Escher. Then he has the ability to increase their attack bar by 15% and then our attack speed, right, at the same time. So you can make your team quote unquote faster than what their runes are because you're giving them attack bar, attack speed. Make sense? It can enable you, if you have a really good follow-up, to either outspeed and damage them, or maybe outspeed, strip, and stun them, CC control them, things like that. So really cool. He also has the ability to remove beneficial effects on his third skill, which is always really good because RTA is about what? We're talking about control or buff removal or damage, right? So let's just do all three. Next up, let's talk about, so we talked about units that are not necessarily like natural 5-stars. The only 5-star monster being Riley, who's feasible. But I want to touch on, maybe you have some nat 5s in your box that can help you get higher in RTA just because of you having the monsters. Now, the caveat would be like, if you have light and dark nat 5s, let's say you have a Ragdoll, let's say you have a Nephthys, or if you have a Tian like I do, you will hear people say all the time, oh, if I had your monsters, I would be G1, G2, G3. But at the end of the day, if my monsters are this slow, I mean, I'm not going to become G2 or G3. That's just reality. If my Nephthys is only at 240 speed, nothing's happening. I'm not going anywhere. So don't get discouraged by other people saying, oh, you have these overpowered monsters that you summoned 6 years ago. You should be G1 already. That's not the case. It's your runes that are going to hold you back. And the runes that are holding me back. If my monsters are faster, maybe I'd be higher in rank. I'm not higher in rank. Just a reality. So don't get discouraged by what other people are saying to you. Like, just realize that you came back, you're 6 years behind, 5 years behind, 4 years, whatever you're behind. And just focus on short-term goals of improving your monsters steadily and slowly, and seeing how your new rune additions to your box are making your monsters more effective or not effective in PvP. But I want to talk about some monsters that I found are really helpful to me, and they're nat 5s. And this is one of the new ones, the newest one, which is Miles. Miles is the water sky surfer, and Miles has the ability to gain attack speed, gain speed just generally by the beneficial effects that are granted on the monsters on the field on both sides, be it your side or their side. You get 5% more speed, up to 100%, for each beneficial effect granted on your team or the opposite team. So, saying that, I have my Miles on, and every Miles should be violent, and every Miles should have a shield subset of runes, because shield gives one buff to yourself and one buff to each of your teammates. So when you load up into RTA and you have Miles, let's say you have all your monsters on Will, 3 monsters on Will, and you have Miles on Violent, Shield, you're going to have 8 buffs right off the bat for free. And the team on the other side of the field, your enemy, let's say they have Will. That's 4 more buffs. So you can have 12 buffs working in your favor right off the bat. But what's really good about Miles too is that if you take Miles into a cleave team, you really have the possibility of cutting in between monsters after they buff for whatever damage or whatever protection they're going to do. So if you pick Miles and like he lets you, no, let's say he's playing Bastet and like Lucian or something. Well, yeah, ideally you don't want to take a monster that's water into Lucian, but if he starts the best stat and he buffs up his entire team with shield and attack buff. That's even more buffs on top of the will sets and your shield set on your team that you might be able to just go ahead and stun Lucian off the bat. Maybe you can stun, even if they have Kaki, stun Kaki off the bat, or Pisama, and slow their damage down, or even just completely destroy their turn order, right? It's I found Miles to be incredibly effective to the point where as I played RTA a little bit, it's getting banned more and more often. You're seeing people use it in the World Championship qualifiers. You're seeing streamers use Miles too, because they're getting the idea that a Miles can compensate for you not having fast runes. And the whole point of this video is trying to understand, how do you close the gap with people that have been playing the game for a long time? And it's really about being really efficient about the monsters you have, the runes on them, and the monsters that you actually use in RTA. So if you have a Miles, it's amazing. Perfect. Good for you. Let's go to the next set of monsters this time, not just one single monster, is the Dragon Knights. The Dragon Knights of all kinds are amazing. So Ragdoll, of course, is one of the best units in the game because it lets your whole entire team get attack bar when they're critted on. So when you're critted on, you get attack bar. But the whole idea of closing the gap, right, is to make your monsters seem quote unquote faster. And if you can manipulate your team's attack bar by just taking a little bit of damage, you're basically turning Ragdoll into a nemesis rune for your entire team and giving them the chance to go or to cut in or to get out of stun or something. Ragdoll's really great for that. But the whole Dragon Knight family is amazing because, number one, it doesn't take too much to skill him up. Like, I don't use Chow, but if you have Chow, Chow is an amazing last pick. Let's say they have some fire monsters or water monsters. If you pick Chow into as a last pick and they let it go through, you can solo the entire team with just Chow. You can take Chow into Labyrinth and just solo Labyrinth levels with just Chow. That's how strong Chow is. And the reason for that is because he's been buffed a little bit since we last played. He gets a little bit of healing that he can start on his turn depending on the harmful effects that are applied to him. So it's like, maybe you're going against a Juno. Junos can solo certain teams, but how about Juno versus Chow? It can work out in your favor. Let's talk about the next Dragon Knight, Leo. Let's say we're all slow. Well, Leo will make everybody slow. So it's an even playing field, kind of, with Leo. Leo can be picked into Beast Riders of the opponent. So if your opponent has Beast Riders, their damage is based off attack speed, and they can buff attack speed as well. So if you are fighting against like a Savannah or like even a Narsha or something like that, bringing in a Leo either gets banned outright or lets you even the playing field by lessening the damage and making all the units as fast as your Leo, which is all the whole point of closing the gap, because the gap really is the rune quality. We need to close that rune quality gap by picking smart and really being efficient with our rune usage. Another great monster for PvP, I probably mentioned this earlier on with Antares, is Diana. Diana is insane because the amount of turns you can take, the ability to, if you crit on all your attacks in the human form, you can get another turn. And you can stun with the first skill, and you can buff shields with your second skill. So you can kind of get to choose. Like, okay, if you're going up against a cleave, if you need to survive the first turn, if you can shield all of your team, you might buy yourself some time to respond. And that's what this is. We need time. We need the ability to get turns. We need attack bar. We need speed. And Diana can really help you get there. Diana's going to be a unit you use from fighter to G3. It's an amazing unit. If you have it, you're really fortunate. Let's talk about some units I don't have that are great if you have them, because they respond just based off, they counterattack every time someone on their team gets attacked. So you can put, let's say Artemail. If you have an Artemail, like, great. So every time you get attacked, he counterattacks. Really good. Maybe not as good as it was when we first played, and not as godly as when we first played, but Artemail is really good if you still have it. Let's say, how about a Kinky, which is the light version of the Onimusha. Where can I find Kinky here? Kinky's really great because the passive is counterattacks the target if you damage or receive damage less than 50% of your max HP. So if he's the last monster alive, he can solo really well. And let's talk about another monster that can solo really well if she's the last one alive. If you have a Juno has that ability to put Juno on Despair or Vampire, and you can't really debuff Juno, so it's kind of hard to kill Juno. You pick Juno into teams that have a lot of debuffs. Let's say they have the best stat, they have like a Nepsis or something that just puts debuffs out. You might be able to survive. So those are some Nat 5s that you have. All Nat 5s can be pretty good, but if you have those Nat 5s, you want the ability to either like solo teams, which is like Dragonites can really do really well. Oh, let's talk about that one before we leave. Leica is a Dragonite. I just kind of glanced over, but Leica is amazing because he can counterattack. Okay, he can't be killed if the attacks are too much as far as compared to his max HP. And if you put him on Vampire, he'll heal himself up. He can solo teams as well if you pick him into, let's say, into a cleave team. Okay, like a wind cleave, like Lucian or something like that. He can be really effective. Let's move on from the Nat 5s. Like I said before, if you have Nat 5s, try to use them. I don't know what you have, but if you have these things, these have great ability to solo. There's other monsters that can solo pretty well depending on the team, like the Water Barbaric King. If you have Aegir, you can pick him as well. Rakan kind of has that ability now. He's kind of okay. Not too great, but if you have him, feel free to use him. But I mentioned before about closing the gap comes to rune efficiency, right? Ideally in the world, you'd want to have a lot of your monsters on like plus 180, plus 190 violent sets, but we don't have that, right? And I don't have that. And even though I've been farming nonstop for 3 months, I'm not even close to that. Like my fastest violent set is 153 and 156. They're not really fast. I don't outspeed anybody just based off the speed alone. But we don't want to make that problem exasperated. We want to focus their best rune sets on 1 or 2 monsters. So when you're farming dragons B12, you're going to get a little bit of violent, you're going to get a little bit of revenge, more guard, and shit like you won't use focus or endure. But what you want to do is look at all the dungeons, and when you farm them, you want to use the best rune set for each dungeon on 1 monster. And how I do it is like when I'm farming Necropolis B12, I get Nemesis runes, and I put all my best Nemesis runes on Chloe. So you can do the same thing as me. So if you want to make like a trap tech Chloe and you farm Necropolis, just look at all your Nemesis runes and put your best Nemesis runes on Chloe and try to get 3 sets of Nemesis. If you can't, it could be like kind of like my Fran, maybe Will, Nemesis. But we want to focus our best runes of one type on 1 or 2 monsters and make teams based around that. Because maybe it's like you don't want to dilute your violent sets to run 3 guys on violent and 1 guy on swift and you not ever take a turn because you're so slow, right? Speed's really important. I hate to say it, but it is. Speed's very important. So we talked about Nemesis. That can be Chloe, or that can be Fran. It can even be like a Juno, or even Riley, because Riley's going to take a lot of damage, a lot of hits anyways, right? But let's move on to another set. Despair. Despair is great on your Antares. Like if you have 1 really good Despair set, just don't dilute it and make 2 Despair sets. Just put it on Antares and you're set. He's going to be your Despair monster, right? Another good target for Despair could be the aforementioned Juno. Juno is really flexible with the runes. She can be on like anything. Juno can be on Vampire if you want. But Juno can be... Where's Juno? Yeah, Juno can be on Despair too. And your AoE CCers, like a Changpeng, like this Changpeng, can be on Despair like mine is. Let's say you have a Poseidon. You put Poseidon on Despair, so he has even more chance to CC people, to crowd control people. Even a Pisama. Like if you have Pisama, you can put him on a lot of rune sets. So he's very flexible on whatever rune set. I wish I had one. I really did. But you can put him on Despair, Vampire, because he has AoEs, right? Let's talk about vampire a little bit more. We talked about Ayunubian. He can be your vampire target if you have one good vampire set. And Leica. I mentioned Leica on vampire as well. So if you have a good vampire set and you have one of these monsters, throw it on them and use that monster consistently when you create your teams. Swift targets. Swift, well, it's really flexible. Like you want Swift on the monster that's going to go first, of course, obviously. And you want it to do something. Maybe it needs to strip units. So you want to focus your Swift set on a monster that has a really high base speed, because you don't want to make it harder for yourself and try to outspeed someone when you're picking like a Moor, and a Moor he's a great unit, but his base speed is 103, right? Compared to a Trident 116. Like, your unit Moor could be better, but if you never go, well, it's useless, right? You want to actually have a chance to take a turn. And I also mentioned Escher being a target for your Swift runes. Your Bastet, if you want to counter, if you want to cleave as well, why don't you just cleave with Bastet? And Bastet can be, where is Bastet? Bastet has, not the greatest runes. I mean, not the greatest base speed, but Bastet could be your option if you want to cleave with your AoEers. Okay. Oh, another target would be Sekhmet. Sekhmet was recently buffed to have 15 more speed upon awakening. So Sekhmet could be a way to outspeed the enemy team by having just higher base speed. And where is Sekhmet? Having higher base speed and then resetting somebody. Just one target. Reset one target. That could change the game pretty easily. So those are some targets. Let's see. What's the next one? Oh, Violent. Violent, you can put anyone on Violent. So if you have a really good Violent set or sets, I would say Chung Pong is great on Violent. Diana is great on Violent. Your monsters that do damage are great on Violent. Like my Ragdoll is on Violent. Monsters like maybe your if you have a Wind Panda, put a Wind Panda on Violent. Basically, people that monsters that do damage are great, and your support as well. So if you have an Annabelle, or any other occult girl, Violent, easily, but not necessarily, but easily. Let's go to another Dragon's rune set, which is for Revenge. So Revenge obviously was on Verd, like we mentioned that earlier. So if you have a really good Revenge set, put that on Verd. It's going to be the best usage of your Revenge runes. Revenge subsets can go on your other monsters. If you don't have good will sets, if you don't farm Necropolis at all, you don't have will, put your Diana on Revenge. Put any of the ponies are great on Revenge. Anyone that has a good first skill, good on Revenge, like let's say even like a Valkyrie. A Valkyrie has a new buff ability to adjust cooldown, or let's see what it says. Yeah, put an enemy skill on cooldown with 20% chance. So if you're Revenge, you have a small chance to mess up with their cooldown. And let's talk about Fatal and Rage, or damage sets in general. So if you have a good Rage set, I would say just put it on your best damage dealer. And honestly, if you want to cleave, just put it on like a Lucian. Just make a Lucian yourself and cleave other people with Lucian, Bastet, or something like that. And if you have a really good Fatal set and not a Rage set, just put on Cocky. Obviously, we talked about that before. Cocky and Fatal, really easy. And Cyan on Fatal as well. So whatever monsters you have, try to focus your best runes on those monsters. So that's how you play catch up. You don't try to make a big RTA team. Ideally, you want to, but you just really want a handful of units that you can put your best runes on and make a team that kind of gels together. And that's something you'll find out by playing RTA a little bit more. But with that mindset of being really small and efficient, your teams can look better than what your overall rune quality and rune depth actually is. But how do you get better at RTA? Like, what do you do to get better at RTA? I think the most fun way and the easiest way is to actually watch replays of other people playing with monsters that you might have. So in the World Arena menu under Spectate, click on replay on the left-hand side, and clicking info will show the teams that each of these people are using. So you can maybe find someone that has monsters that you have and see how they pick and play and the order that they pick, because the order is really important. Like when you start using your wings and start PvPing, you'll start to learn that there's a lot of strategy when it comes to the order you pick your units, because you don't want them to know your strategy on your first 1, 2, or 3 picks sometimes, right? Maybe your last 2 picks will display your strategy. Or if they're picking first, your last pick will be the counter to all their picks. And you learn better by seeing other people do it first. Because when you go into it with no idea of how RTA works, it can be kind of discouraging if you lose. Especially like maybe your units are not speed tuned right. Maybe your damage dealer is going before your attack buffer, or maybe your CC unit is going before your stripper. You need to learn the order of the pick, but also the speed order, like what units need to take a turn before another. And watching replays can really help you. And of course, the higher rank replays, they might have monsters that you don't have, but there's like endless amount of replays to watch. So you can try to find something that you have and model your team based off what you find effective, like who's winning in these replays that you're watching. And of course, you want to just do it yourself. You really want to put yourself through the paces in PvP as much as you can take it. But sometimes it's kind of tilting. Like when you lose a lot, like how do you stay in the mindset of grinding out your PvP? Like, well, the thing is, you don't have to. You don't have to PvP if that's not fun for you. It's not necessarily fun for me. I just do it every now and then to see like, oh, are my runes getting better? Am I getting better at picking order, banning, what to ban, and what counter picks are being in? I do it every now and then. I see a little bit of improvement. But if you don't like PvP, don't do it. But if you like PvP, the mindset you should have is setting small goals for yourself. Like, okay, my goal for today is to see if my Nemesis build lets me cut in between their buffer and their strip and their follow-up. Or let's say I want to see if my monster can go first before another monster, so you can see if my Swift runs are getting fast enough to get out of the league I'm currently in. Maybe you want to get out of Challenger and get into Fighter League. Set small goals for yourself. These overarching goals. Don't say to yourself, I want to be like G1. Like that's not a goal. I mean, that goal actually has hundreds of sub goals that need to be accomplished before it. And if you just try to skip to the end and say, okay, I didn't achieve G1 in 3 months, I'm done. Well, that's not really healthy. Set small goals for yourself. So when you can or you don't achieve them, it's not a big blow to your ego, or it doesn't get you to an uncontrollable high. Just stay even as much as possible. Try to realize that you're new to this game. They don't know. Your enemies don't know you're new to this game, but you are new. So let's act it. Let's just be real with yourself. We're just trying to learn, and there's some fun in learning, right? If you are choosing monsters that you enjoy or monsters that seem really funny, it could really help in the bracing against the loss. They're going to come. But the matching system is pretty intelligent. You might be losing just 50% of the time, so it's pretty average. Like my win rate, what is my win rate? Can I see it here? My win rate right now is 52%. Right? That's pretty average. I'm winning one, losing one, winning one, losing one. That's normal for me. That's normal for most people. So just kind of keep that in mind, that the ranking system, the matching system, is going to get you to that 50% chance. So you're going to lose about half your matches. Well, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, too, I want to point out, too, is when you first started doing RTA, you're going to get a lot of currency, a lot of tokens from the season achievements. And there's great things to buy in the World Arena Shop. You cannot deny yourself of these things. If you like light and dark monsters, you need to do Arena and max out your light and dark pieces. You need to get all 5 of them per month. Just 5 per month. If you like light and dark monsters, just do enough to get 5 pieces per month. But also, I mean, the scrolls are pretty cheap too. 40 or 50 for the attribute scrolls or the mystical scroll. And of course, there's legendary pieces that come, 10 packs for 80. 10 pieces for 80 tokens. As well, if you'd like to transmog, this is one of the only sources of transmogs other than farming. So if you want to get one of the transmogs you missed, there are some great transmogs out there. They came out with this like K-pop like idol transmog that I want to get so bad for my Trinity. Let's see, collection, dark. Where is the Trinity one? Dude, I want that. I can buy it right now, but I want to make sure that I really want it because it's really hard to get these summoning, these transmog stones. But looks amazing. Like, I want that really badly. So if you like just the whole aesthetics of monsters, yeah, do arena just enough to get transmog stones. Get enough just to get your LD for the month. Like, you need to summon good monsters, right? So this is one of the ways you can get another avenue of getting scrolls to summon. And let's be honest, like summoning is one of the best parts of this game. So ultimately, at the end of the day, like we can only do so much with the runes that we have, but try to have fun by learning the system. It's going to be a lot more fun when 2v2 comes out because I think it's going to be a lot more casual. It's out right now, so you can try it, but there's no rewards for it, so it might not be the best use of your time if you're really trying to play catch up. But if you need a break, play some 2v2 and just queue up with a random person and have a lot of fun that way. Just get better runes, summon more monsters, and you'll get to the point where you can be in, Conqueror 1 relatively easy. I got there in about a month. And so I think you can get there too. Well, thanks so much for listening, guys. I'll be coming out with another video soon about catching up, and talk to you then.